Hello, everyone, and I use that designation, that term, in a legal context. I'm glad you stopped by to watch this video. I have to say, after you watch this video, you're going to have to make a decision because tonight and through this video, I'm going to expose a lot of things that are going on in the United States of America. And some of you may be under a, a delusion, I'm sorry to say, or a false teaching, a straw man teaching concerning how to express your rights and how to implement your rights in the United States of America. Somehow, some way, you listened to someone else's teachings and you believed and you accepted those teachings to be true. And within the context of those teachings, they have declared to you that there is no ability for you to enforce your rights in the current legal system, in the current court judicial system that operates in America. And this video is going to expose that fact. If your true motive and your real reason for teaching what you have been teaching upon the internet was because you wanted to have our fundamental rights and freedoms respected, then when you come across this video and you realize what has been transpiring, there's no reason why you cannot adjust what you've been sharing accordingly. There's no reason why you cannot make an adjustment and a declaration to the fact that you have come across new information and now this needs to be implemented in order to exercise your rights. What is ridiculous is individuals that are on the internet that are out there teaching you falsehoods, false conceptions, and then you applying them in your own life and getting into legal trouble. And with that said, I just want to remind you something. With what I share concerning fundamental rights and freedoms from international law into constitutional law, it's an all or nothing deal. You can't combine this with other understandings. You cannot combine this with other, if you will, teachings. This is a system that was created and put into place for us to exercise our rights. I didn't create it. I am just walking down it. And by opening up the door and walking through it, I'm able to share with others who come after me because I've walked down this road already and I've seen this path already. And I can tell you, watch out to the left, watch out to the right. Why? Because I experienced it. With that out of the way, let's start the real reason for this video. Standing in court in America. So you guessed it. It's about how to express and how to have your inalienable natural rights respected within the court system of America. Now, on the prior videos that I shared, we talked about the U.S. reservations and declarations and understandings concerning the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. That the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights is part of a bill that is called the International Bill on Human Rights. And within these covenants, our common law rights, our inalienable rights, our natural rights have been protected and have been recognized. And through these covenants, America, the United States of America, is under obligation to respect them and to ensure these rights to you when you seek to exercise them. Now we look at states, the Senate's advice and consent is subject to the following understandings, which shall apply to the obligations of the United States under this covenant. So the United States has obligations towards the covenant. That the United States understands that this covenant shall be implemented by the federal government to the extent that it exercises legislative and judicial jurisdiction over the matters covered therein, and otherwise by the state and local governments. So the federal government, the state government, and the local governments, your municipalities, are all subject to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, and are all subject to the rights that are being expressed through this covenant. And they have to allow you to fulfill the covenant when you exercise your rights. Now, they made a reservation and a declaration. They stated that the United States declares that the provisions of Article 1 through 27 of the covenant are not self-executing. So again, it's up to you as one man or one woman to claim your rights before them and to execute or exercise your rights before the state party, America. If this is the first time that you've been watching my videos, or you haven't watched the videos that I have included in the links below attached to this video, then you should stop here and go back and watch those videos. It will give you a greater understanding concerning what I am talking about the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and the Constitution Act of America and the Constitution Acts of your subsequent state, where the obligations are being produced against your government bodies to allow you to exercise your rights. Don't just continue on in this video because you will not have a proper foundation to understand this video. So stop, take some time, watch the other videos, and then come back here. For those who are familiar, let's continue on. So when we look into the Constitution of California, I took that as an example because it clearly indicates what's transpiring. In Article 1, it says Declaration of Rights. It says all men are by nature free and independent and have certain inalienable rights, among which are those of enjoying and defending life, liberty, acquiring, possessing, and protecting property, and pursuing and obtaining safety and happiness. So your own constitution of the state recognizes that all men are by nature free and have inalienable rights. Now, these freedoms and inalienable rights, they come out of the covenant. They are expressed in the international covenants, and the obligation is upon the United States of America to allow you to exercise these rights when you stand under the status, when you stand under the designation of a man. So, let's look at taxation, for example, because a lot of people face this. You are claiming that as a man, you have fundamental rights and freedoms, not to have to contribute taxation to their economic, social, and cultural development. They are saying that failing to pay a taxation, operating your right, produces a crime. When you study the international covenants, you understand what taxation is. Taxation in international law is a contribution to the economic, social, and cultural development of the United States of America. And they ask you to pay this taxation based upon the principle of mutual benefit. That's what they're using. That's the operation of law. When you look into the international covenant, it says all peoples have the right of self-determination. By virtue of that right, they freely determine their political status and freely pursue their economic, social, and cultural development. All peoples may for their own ends freely dispose of their natural wealth and resources without prejudice to any obligations arising out of international economic cooperation based upon the principle of mutual benefit and international law. And in no case, in no way, with no law, may a people be deprived of its own means of subsistence. When we look into Black Laws, the second edition, the designation or definition of the word people, it states the word people may have various significations according to the connection in which it is used. When we speak of the rights of the people or of the government of the people by law, or of the people as a non-political aggregate, we mean all the inhabitants of the state or nation, without distinction as to the sex, age, or otherwise. But when reference is made to the people of the repository of sovereignty, or as a source of governmental power, or to popular government, we are in fact speaking of that selected and limited class of citizens, the class of persons, the artificial person, to whom the Constitution accords the elective franchise and the right of participation in the offices of government. As one of the people, one inhabitant in this state party's territory, you have the right to decide if you will contribute to the social, economic, and cultural development of the United States of America. In no case, in no way, under no circumstance, can you be forced to contribute to the economic growth or development of your state or of America. Your means of subsistence that you earn, gain, and pursue by free choice, as the law declares, in working, is yours to do with as you please, and there is no domestic law that can be created which would force you to turn over this wealth to a society based upon the principle of mutual benefit. So we see in international law, it states this fact. As a people, you have the right, as a man, as a woman, you have the right to freely dispose of your wealth and resources, and you have no obligation to any principle based upon mutual benefit. That's your right. You can stand under that. And we just saw prior in the Constitution that they declare that all men are by nature free and independent and have certain inalienable rights. Now we are seeing one of these rights that are being expressed in the international covenants, that America and your subsequent state has the obligation to allow you to exercise if you claim them. Because remember, they are not self-executing. It's up to you to claim these rights. So your means of subsistence is yours to use alone. And when you look in Article 2.2 of the covenant, it states this: where not already provided for by existing legislative or other measures, each state party to the present covenant undertakes to take the necessary steps in accordance with its constitutional process and with the provisions of the present covenant to adopt such laws or other measures as may be necessary to give effect to the rights recognized in the present covenant. So the United States of America was under the obligation to provide measures and to take steps to implement this covenant right into their domestic law. And we saw again at the start of this video, they have fulfilled their obligation. They implemented the covenant, they implemented the rights, but they said they are not self-executing. You have to call upon them. You have to stand under them. When you continue to look into the covenant, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, Article 5, you find the following expression: nothing in the present covenant may be interpreted as implying for any state, group, or person any right to engage in any activity or perform any act aimed at the destruction of any of the rights and freedoms recognized herein, or at their limitation to a greater extent than is provided for in the present covenant. So sometimes the covenant expresses a right and then allows the state party, the United States of America, to limit the right. That's when we look at taxation, at contributions, it's been expressed in Article 1, and it says all peoples have the right to freely dispose of their natural wealth and resources without having to donate based upon the principle of mutual benefit. This right had to be expressed, and now the covenant is saying you cannot limit this right unless the covenant allows you. Well, let's check in the covenant itself to see what the covenant says about this particular right. And we find it in Article 47, where it says nothing in the present covenant shall be interpreted as impairing their inherent right of all peoples to enjoy and utilize fully and freely their natural wealth and resources. So America, the United States of America, cannot find any provision in the covenant that allows them to force a contribution from you, that allows them to take a contribution from you based upon the principle of mutual benefit. Again, we are seeing it is stated that nothing in the covenant can force a person, peoples, to turn over their wealth. There is no provision that will be found in the covenant that America can transfer into domestic law that would force a man to have to contribute and give up his wealth and resources that he or she is earning and pursuing after. So you are claiming that as a man or woman, you have a fundamental right and freedom not to have to contribute taxation to their economic, social, and cultural development. But the funds, the money that you make through earning and pursuing a living is to be used for your economic, social, and cultural development. And they are saying that failing to pay a taxation, operating your right, produces a crime. That's the charge they come after you. They say you haven't filed, you haven't paid a taxation, you're breaking USC Code Article 26, therefore this is producing a crime. However, when you look into the judiciary, when you look into the court system of the United States of America, you find a court case that is called Miller versus the United States. And in this court case, it is clearly brought forth and judged upon the fact that a right cannot be converted into a crime. What's transpiring is the IRS, under USC Code 26, is coming after you as an artificial entity. And they are coming after you as the officer of the United States of America. They are not engaging in interactions with you as a man, but they are engaging in interactions with you as a class of persons. And remember, your right to be recognized as a person before the law is up to you to exercise. If you want to stand before them as a man and not as a class of persons, you have to declare this to them, because your right is not self-executing, and they will not take judicial notice. They will not take recognition of the fact that they are dealing with a person or a man in his full legal capacity. They come at you with the enactment, claiming you're the class of persons who owes the obligation, and therefore they try to charge you with a crime. However, if you stand in your natural capacity as a man or woman with inalienable rights, then you are seeking to exercise one of your common law rights, one of your fundamental rights and freedoms that is now expressed in the international covenants and in the Constitution Acts of the United States and of the states themselves. And as exercising that right, they cannot convert it into a crime. They cannot charge you and say you are partaking in a crime. Why? Because I am simply exercising my fundamental right. You are exercising your constitutional rights, your fundamental rights and freedoms, your inalienable rights, your natural rights, your human rights. These are all one and the same. That's what you are exercising as a man or woman. And the other party, the IRS, wants to say that by doing so, it is a crime. The court has already ruled concerning this fact. Once you can prove to the court that you indeed have a right, as expressed internationally and through the United States and the state constitutions, it becomes a material fact. You cannot just stand before the courts and say, I'm a man, I have rights, I'm a man, the laws don't apply to me. That's not going to work. You have to prove that the United States of America has an obligation to respect your rights. You have to bring forth their obligations through the covenants, through the Constitution Acts themselves, where we've seen it. We have these rights, and now you have the responsibility to protect them. You have to walk them through these principles and show them this. By walking them through the principles, you are establishing the fact. You are showing them that you indeed do have the right that you are claiming. And it becomes a material fact. So you are claiming before them, you have the common law right, the fundamental right to keep your wealth and resources for you and your family. You've expressed it and you showed the obligation through international law, through constitutional law, and you're claiming that's your standing, that is your ground before them. And this becomes a material fact in what you're dealing with. And when you look at the court case, Halsman versus Hemmeter, it states a material or a fact is material if proof of that fact would have the effect of establishing or refuting one of the essential elements of a cause of action or defense asserted by the parties. So they're coming after you, saying that you owe the obligation under USC Code 26. They're stating that you are involved in a crime now because you are not filing and you are not paying your contributions. However, if you establish the material fact that you possess and are able to operate and execute a fundamental right, by proving this fact, you are breaking their cause of action against you, because the material fact alone is defeating their claim against you. For their claim is saying you are engaged in a crime. But remember, your right as a man not to contribute can never be converted into a crime. So you've checkmate them there. Their cause of action against you is that you are committing a crime by not following USC 26 code. But the truth is, you are exercising your rights as a man. And once you establish this, it refutes or destroys their cause of action against you. What position is the agent of the United States operating from? So they come after you under the USC Code, Article 26, claiming you have not made your contributions. You have not paid your taxation. These agents are working for or are engaged by a corporation, a corporate body that is called the IRS, Internal Revenue Service. And the agents are artificial entities in law representing a corporation, an artificial entity. And in the court case, Rundle versus Delaware and Rartin Canal Company, it states a corporation cannot sue or otherwise contend with a living, natural man or woman. As stated previously, they will try and bring you into court under the artificial entity. And if you do not understand what I'm talking about here, the class of persons, you shouldn't have continued on in this video. You should have stopped in the beginning like I asked you and went and watched the other videos. They are bringing you before them as a class of persons, saying that you owe the obligation to the enactment through the code. You have to pay the taxation. You are saying that you are standing as a man or as a woman with your natural rights, your fundamental rights intact, and that you are executing these rights. When you do that, not only do you present the material fact, but you put them in the position where now the corporation cannot sue you. He cannot come after you and say, I'm suing you because you are exercising your common law right, your fundamental right and freedom. And if you look even deeper into this, in the court case, Friedman Brothers Furniture versus Department of Revenue, it says fraud committed in the procurement of jurisdiction is a very, very bad thing. So if they try to disregard what you are saying to them, we go back right up from the start of this. You come at them in your explanations. Listen, I understand that I have international rights and fundamental freedoms. And these are my common law rights. These are my natural rights that have been expressed. And you are under obligation as being a state party member to this covenant to respect my rights. And these rights are coming out of your own constitutions. And now I am here standing before you under these principles of justice to exercise my fundamental rights and freedoms. I'm standing as a man. I'm not committing a crime because my right cannot be transferred or converted into a crime like the IRS is trying to declare. I've proved to you the material fact that I do indeed have this right, and the fact that I have this right, it breaks their essential elements of their cause of action against me because they are claiming that I'm an artificial entity and I owe the obligation to the USC Code 26, but I am not. My primary designation or capacity is that as man, and I am exercising my right, and you cannot say that that right can now be converted into a crime. Since I am standing as a man and you are a corporation, you cannot sue me, or you cannot produce a cause of action against me, for I am a living man or a natural woman. And if you continue to try and do this to me, to force me to play the class of persons, to try and get jurisdiction over me, you're committing fraud. You're committing fraud on me, and you're committing fraud on the court. If these agents and lawyers push the point against you when you invoke your fundamental rights and freedoms, then what they're doing is they're committing fraud to try and establish jurisdiction over you. And if they force you to go into court, if by notifying them properly and sending out your proper documentations to them doesn't put a stop to what they're trying to do to you, and they for some reason don't want to allow you to execute your fundamental rights and freedoms, your common law rights, your human rights, your natural rights, and they still want to try and drag you into court, maybe they think you don't really understand what's transpiring. Maybe they think you just copied some paperwork off the internet and sent it to them, so they're going to test you. If they bring you into court, then you want to testify to your status on record through your live registration of birth. That alone would be enough to shut down the case, for once you establish your status before them as a man, then the court cannot let the IRS sue you. It's a corporation in law. And remember, we just saw that a corporation cannot sue a living man or a woman. You'd freak out the court alone just by doing that. But that's not what you want to do. You're not going there to court to make trouble. You're going there to exercise your common law rights and your fundamental rights and freedoms. And there are certain operations, certain principles, certain mechanisms that you must follow. It's that pathway that you got to walk down. You got to show them that they have the obligation in international law. You got to show them where the obligation comes out or where it's transferred into domestic law. You got to explain to them the right. You got to explain to them the principles of the right, that it can never be limited. And you got to show to them what exactly the IRS is doing to you by forcing you to play that class of person, as I've been talking about in this video. But if you find yourself still in their courts of law because they want to test you right away, testify to your status for and on the record concerning that you're a man before the court. And then the court is put into the position of having to protect you. When you look into the court case, Marbury versus Madison, laws that are against the Constitution are null and void. So if they are trying to claim that you owe an obligation to USC Code 26, you walk the court, you walk the judge through the principles of justice, as we talked about tonight in this video. Show them what it says in Article 1 of the International Covenant. Show them what it says in Article 2, that the right has to be transferred. Show them that the covenant has to allow them to limit the right. But when you look at the right of contributions and taxation, there's no limitation that can be placed upon that right. Show them where it comes out in your own Constitution acts that you have these rights and you are allowed to express these rights. When you do that, the judge is put into position again to have to judge that these laws are null and void against you. And again, once you do that, you're showing the judge, you're showing the court that the Bill of Rights, your Constitution, is not being complied with. And then the court no longer has jurisdiction to proceed. The court is not supposed to continue. Why? Because the court realizes now, oops, there's a man standing before me. Oops, there's a woman standing before me who has fundamental rights and freedoms. And a corporation is trying to sue them. That's what's going on here. And I don't have the authority to deal with this. But it's up to you to show this to the court. If they keep you in there and try to force you to come into that position, you must prove that the enactment is breaching your rights and therefore your fundamental rights and freedoms. You must walk the court through the principles of justice concerning the right you are seeking to enforce, and show the court that the actions of the agents has limited or denied your right contrary to these principles of justice. In the court case Cooper versus Aaron, it states state government officials are bound to comply with the Supreme Court rulings and court orders based upon the Supreme Court interpretations of the Constitution. The U.S. Constitution is the supreme law of the land per the Supremacy Clause of Article 6. Again, in Marbury versus Madison, the federal judiciary was declared the supreme authority with respect to the constitutional interpretation. Marbury versus Madison has been respected by this court and the nation as a permanent and indispensable component of the American constitutional system of government. You have to walk them through the principles of justice. Just standing before the court and saying, I'm a man, I'm a woman, with natural rights, inalienable rights, is not enough. You haven't proved there's been a breach of these rights, even though what you are expressing is correct. Even though what you are bringing forth before them is correct, it doesn't show them that they have an obligation to respect these rights. They will continue to treat you as the class of persons, and they will subsequently release their law against you, fine you, imprison you, take away your property, whatever it may be. But, and if, you start from the beginning. You, America, have an obligation to the international covenants. It comes out in the reservations, in the declarations that you made concerning it, that you would respect these rights. These rights are not self-executing in the Constitution. I have to call upon them. Your own constitutions bring forth and recognize these rights. All men, not citizen, men, are by nature free and independent and have inalienable rights. When we look into the covenant, I have a fundamental right to keep my wealth and resources for myself, and I don't have to contribute based upon the principle of mutual benefit. This right had to be transferred into the Constitution Act of the United States of America, and you cannot limit this right unless the covenant allows you to limit the right. When I look into the covenant, it does not allow you to limit this right. This is the principle of why I am not making a contribution. As a man, I am exercising this right. Since I am a man exercising this right, Miller versus the United States, the court case, says you cannot convert this right that I am exercising into a crime to charge me and bring me before the court. When I express these principles, it then becomes a material fact that I am indeed a man or a woman exercising my fundamental right. And this material fact is enough, produces enough element to destroy their cause of action against you, for they are claiming you are a class of persons partaking in, involved in a crime by not contributing, and by showing the court or showing the party that you are a man exercising your fundamental right, their ability to charge falls by the wayside. When you are a man standing in your natural capacity, a corporation cannot sue you, and it cannot contend with you as a living natural man or woman. And this comes out in the court case Rundle versus Delaware. If they continue to try and use fraud to obtain jurisdiction over you by not recognizing your natural rights, by pretending that you do not have these natural rights, this is fraud against you, and they cannot claim jurisdiction against you. In the court case Mulberry versus Madison, it states laws that are against the Constitution are null and void. When you show the court that the laws they are trying to apply against you are breaching your constitutional rights, then the court no longer has jurisdiction to proceed. You find that in Johnson versus Zerbist. They want to access this court under the statutory powers, under the USC 26 code. They want to declare that you're the class of persons who owes an obligation to the code, and therefore you are in violation and are partaking of a crime. That's how they want to drag you in there. They want to get you before the judge in that way. However, once you express what is really transpiring, then this court case comes into play. State versus Sutton. When any court violates the clean and unambiguous language of the Constitution, a fraud is perpetrated and no one is bound to obey it. So if they continue in their games and they try to secure a judgment against you, that's a fraud. I don't see it happening when you walk on the path that has been created for you, when you walk upon this road that they left there, but then put gates in front and chains and a whole bunch of locks upon it. And didn't the Bible say, didn't Jesus say, woe unto you lawyers, for you shut up the pathway? You hold the key to it, you hold the key to the locks, but you shut it up so that we can't go through. Well, guess what? In the court case, Rook versus Rook, a void judgment is one that has been produced by extrinsic or collateral fraud, or entered by a court that did not have jurisdiction over the subject matter of the parties. So again, when you prove to the court who you are, standing before them in your full legal capacity as a man exercising a fundamental right, then the court does not have the right to even hear this charge against you, because they don't have the right to be contending with you in law. They are trying to commit fraud through jurisdiction to take authority over you and say you're a class of persons. But if you express yourself and your constitutional rights properly, and you show the court that this charge against you is violating your fundamental rights and freedoms, then the court doesn't have the jurisdiction to proceed, according to Johnson, and they shouldn't proceed. And they usually don't. Our fundamental rights and freedoms, our common law rights, have been preserved for us. They are guaranteed to us. They are recognized by the state party, and the state party is under obligation to preserve them and respect them once we seek to execute them. The problem is not with the mechanism to enforce them. The problem was the mechanism to learn them. They had the obligation to teach us our fundamental rights and freedoms and how to execute them and how to use them within this system. That's where they failed. And because they failed, all of us are sitting and are facing these consequences now. Some of us wake up and understand, hey, I've been designated a class of persons, an artificial being in law, what the heck is going on? I'm a man or I'm a woman. Why are they doing this to me? And they realize what's transpiring and they seek after remedies. And sometimes, or most of the time, the remedies fail. It's not a question of the remedy not being present. It's a question of us not being taught how to use the remedy that is already there. If you want to see more of what I share concerning fundamental rights and freedoms, human rights and freedoms, you can visit me at eternallyaware.com, or if you want to speak to me, you can email me at eternallyaware@yahoo.com. The mechanism to enforce our rights are present within the domestic law. The pathway, in order to execute our rights, has been laid out before us. Again, it's just because we haven't been taught about this fact. The whole concept of this is about the responsibility lies upon the individual, him or herself, to learn, understand, and execute those rights that they claim to have. Remember, in law, if you make any type of claim, a claim for a right or a claim of assertion, you have to be able to back up your claim with a corresponding obligation upon the other party. What we saw tonight in this video, this pathway that has been laid for us, it was their obligation to create. International law placed the obligation upon them. Create this pathway for the man or the woman to exercise the right. They did so, but further and one step above their obligation is they put big concrete doors and walls around these rights and then put chains and locks on them and said, you can't get through here unless what? Unless you're a lawyer or a member of our society. Don't carry your rights in your pocket. Learn about them and use them. You will be amazed what they will do for you.